for inviting me here to speak today, and I'd also like to thank our partners and friends at Peguas First Nation and acknowledge that we're here on Treaty 1 land. So thank you very much for inviting me today. Kind of an unusual background that I have, and it's going to be probably one of the things that I will tell you will probably shock you, that I went from a federal agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and now I work and run a cannabis company. So if you'd have said 10 years ago that I would have been here speaking in Canada talking about cannabis 10 years ago instead of fishing or something different, I never would have imagined that. So thank you very much for taking the time here today. Hopefully what you'll leave here with will be somewhat of a better understanding of cannabis and some of the things that I have experienced and seen over the last 4 to 5 years that I have been doing this, whether it's been in Denver, Colorado, or here. So again, the background. As you see there, I started 20 years ago. I was in the United States Air Force. I went to the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. I ran a homicide unit. I ran a SWAT unit. I was in the narcotics unit. And then I went to the federal side of it and went to the United States Drug Enforcement Administration as a special agent. And then 5 years ago, something happened, and I was invited to come work for a cannabis industry. And the very first thing that I said when a friend of mine called me and said that he was talking about investing in the cannabis industry, what did I think about coming? And I said, I really don't. There's nothing about this that I want any part of. I was very, very skeptical, to say the least. Fast forward 2013, I moved to Denver, and I start understanding and learning about the different aspects of cannabis. So, with the background you can see, there was never in my life, at 52 years of age, I never thought I would be standing here today. You can see, I look back and I think about those times there, and I said, well, it's kind of nostalgic for me, not necessarily the uniform and stuff, just that I went from a bad hair day to a bad hair decade. So, the big difference there, I think back about where I was at that time in my life. On the right there, I was with the Kansas City Police Department. On the left, I was in the Drug Enforcement Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Fast forward several years later, now I'm with Snoop Dogg. You can't make this up. You truly cannot make this up, that I'm standing there with a box of cash, because in the United States it's not legal to have bank accounts in most places, so you had to do cash and take cash deposits and pay cash with your taxes and doing different things like that. So one of the things that we're really going to talk about is some of the experience why I really believe Canada has done this so much better than the US has done this. Because whether you like this or not, and I want to get that out of the way, I'm not here to change anybody's mind on your perception of, do you believe in it, do you like it, do you love it, do you hate it? It's here. Everybody's decided that this is the direction this is going. So what I hope to do today is educate and teach you how to work within the industry like I had to. Again, stereotypes. Not a very good thing. They said to me, do you want to work in this industry? And I said, I can't work with stoners every day. Well, I was wrong. I will tell you that. First and foremost, when I got to the facilities and started working with the people inside our facilities, our grow facilities, I found out I was definitely the least educated in the room. They were extremely smart, and some of the things that they taught me over the last several years has absolutely blown my mind onto where we are. Experience in the Colorado market. I was a chief compliance officer. I was a president of Buddy Boy Brands. Buddy Boy Brands was a large marijuana dispensary company. We had 7 medical, 3 recreational dispensaries. We had 6 cultivation facilities. We did about 30 million in sales last year. So I understand that side of the things on the business side as well. We established a distribution system with M. Hardeen for compliant transfer, led in forecasting models supplying dispensaries, established tighter security measures. I hired 3 former police officers and former Marijuana Enforcement Division investigators as my compliance team. Cannabis. One of the things that I think is so important, when I first came out and I was doing conferences or doing presentations to law enforcement, that's really where I started, was doing presentations with law enforcement. What I found out was the education. I went to the Drug Enforcement Academy, I was a police officer, I taught at the academy, and our presentation on marijuana was literally about a 2-hour course. And I said, I had never even heard of CBD, and I mean this sincerely, had not heard of CBD until 2013. So a lot of people just have a misunderstanding of the cannabis industry as a whole. So the difference between hemp, the difference between cannabis. Hemp has a THC level of less than 0.3%. The cannabis can have different cannabinoids, THC and CBD content is much higher. Different types, different strains. There's an indica, there's sativa, and there's a hybrid. Indica, everybody kind of says in the couch. It's more of a body high, kind of relaxing. Your sativa is going to be a much faster, kind of pick you up. And then a hybrid today, most everything is a mix of the two. There's truly not many true indicas or sativas that are out on the market today. They've just been cross the breeding and different things like that. They've been mixed a lot. So you're going to have a lot of hybrids. Trichomes. It's the part of the plant really that you're going to see that the cannabinoids and terpenes are derived from. You're going to see like the shiny or the kind of the sticky part of that plant. That's where all of your cannabinoids are located. Terpenes. Terpenes really are the smell. If you start thinking about this, and they're not just in cannabis, they're in flowers, they're in a lot of different things. A terpene is just the odor or the smell profile of that plant. Here's probably the thing that I was shocked the most when I really started learning more about this, was the health benefits and what the cannabis plant and the CBD can do for the body. I truly believed, going back 4 years ago when I heard about this, I said, okay, you're just saying you want to legalize this because you just want to be high. CBD has no psychoactive effect. So when you hear kids or something like that talking about they have epilepsy or there's an issue that they're experiencing and they want to use cannabis or CBD to help with that ailment, there's really no high effect to it. So it would be a tincture where they would just take a drop underneath their tongue. It would be CBD. There would be no high effect, but they're seeing great results with what it can do for seizures, for different ailments. My personal experience, I had my ACL completely torn, had to replace May 1st of 2015. The staff kept saying, Pat, you've got to try the CBD. It will do wonders for your leg. So I got done with surgery, had just the ice cryo cuff, the recirculating ice water, and I was putting CBD cream on. After 7 days, I was off the painkillers. After 2 weeks, I had full extension of my leg. I was doing wall squats during physical therapy at the end of the first month. And he had told me, the doctor had told me that I wasn't going to be able to do anything until probably a year later. That was May 1st. September, first week of September, I was playing golf in Oregon for a week. So I mean, and I had done nothing different than ice and that CBD cream. So either I have some unbelievable healing properties to myself, or there was definitely something with the CBD. So there's a lot of different parts that you can see here that CBD can help. Legalization here in Canada, October 17th. 18 to 19 years old. It's run by the province, how it's legalized here. So each province is going to have a different, somewhat of a different approach to it. Here in Manitoba, the thing that I really, really like, and they have done a great thing, is there's home grows are illegal. Why is that so important? In Colorado, one of the biggest issues that we have in Colorado today are the home grows. What's happening is you're getting organized crime groups are coming in, they're renting houses under the auspice of they just need a house, and then they're coming in and completely gutting those houses and having home grows in there. So one of the things that I will tell you that Manitoba has done a phenomenal job on is keeping that out of there. I will tell you that's one of the quickest ways to have the black market come into your community is have these home grows. So you've done a great job there. This kind of shows Canada, how it's spread out, whether it's in a public sector, whether it's co-located with alcohol. Statistics, 2.3% of Manitobans are at risk of cannabis dependence. The top ways of using cannabis, this all comes from our friends at LGA, so we're taking this straight from their website. Motives for use, 63% are saying to relax or have fun, 25% for various medical reasons, 21% for pain management, 14% to fall asleep, and 12% for social interaction. Public concerns. I think probably the number one public concern that I've seen, and as I've talked with different law enforcement agencies, is the driving. That's a huge issue that they're trying to figure out how that works. So the issue with cannabis is nanograms are how they test what your THC level is in your body. And the problem really becomes if I use cannabis today, that's going to stay in my system for the next 3 to 4 weeks. So it can be up to 30 days where you're going to have some type of a THC level in your system. So is that still a active THC level? Not necessarily. So I think that's one of the biggest concerns is how are we going to judge or how are we going to understand how this is really affecting it? How does this help? In the United States, they're having problems because they're just taking an arbitrary number and saying if you test with 5 nanograms or higher, it means you're high. Well, not necessarily. You could have 5 nanograms in your bloodstream and have no high effect whatsoever. So I think that's going to be one of the, as a chamber and a business owners, that's going to be an issue, trying to figure out or trying to understand what do I do or how do I approach this? How do I tell if somebody's high? Is there drug testing? And what are we going to use for this drug test? What are we going to use as a level to determine their impairment? It's a tough one. And I mean that sincerely because I don't think that at this point there's really a way to determine any true effect of what's active THC or what's not. One of the things that I think it's extremely important, and I know at Grow Force, we really tried to make sure that we are going to be responsible vendors. And that means educate our consumers, respect and protect communities, cooperate with authority and follow regulations. And I think that's important across the board. I don't care where you're at, if it's Canada, the United States. These 4 principles really are important to become responsible vendors. If you're not educating the community, if you're not out working with and doing things like this with the Chamber of Commerce, bringing folks like yourself in to get a better understanding of cannabis, how it works, what it's going to be like. You know, there was a big, oh my God, it's going to be Armageddon in Denver. They've legalized cannabis. We're going to have everybody walking around the streets high like a bunch of zombies. And that's just not the case. It did not happen, has never happened. You know, I'm there every day. I don't see it. It's not an issue. Respect and protect communities. My biggest focus when I came on was to keep this out of the hands of children. I think all of us would agree, whether it's alcohol, whether it's cannabis, we don't want this getting near the kids today. We don't want it to get around. So what I started doing was looking at packaging, saying how do we change what the packaging rules are? How do we make sure that parents can identify if this has THC or cannabis in there. So there's been some symbols that are coming out that each of the products are stamped with. We're required to have a THC on there. One of the things we did in our dispensaries around Halloween is I would hand out test kits for THC so the parents would be able to test to make sure if there was candy around Halloween and different things like that. I think those are the important things for the businesses that are in cannabis here to get out in front of, get out, educate parents, educate the community, make sure that they understand how to identify cannabis, what to look for. Cooperate with authorities. You know, one of the jokes I used to tell, coming from my background, was, you know, when I first was handed the keys 4 years ago and said, okay, this is yours, you have these grow facilities, these are your dispensaries, and I used a key and I came through the front door of one of the grow facilities and walked inside, I thought how strange it was because I was so used to going in the back door with a battering ram, and here today I'm walking through the front door and inside of a thing and it's legal. It was such a different deal. And so I made sure that cooperating with authorities was top of the list, you know, making sure we would have tours that would come through. I would set up those and the law enforcement community could come in anytime. I just got done speaking last week with the Manitoba Association of Chiefs of Police. They were very gracious to invite me, and I did a very similar presentation last week with them, talking about experiences in law enforcement and what that has meant. So, and I think that's really important to make sure that we're out educating and working with the law enforcement. Follow the regulations. Canada's done a tremendous job. Health Canada and the liquor control here have done absolutely a great job in setting out guidelines so you can understand what needs to happen, what you need to do to stay within the regulations that they've set out. And they did their homework. They came to Denver, they did a lot of different places to ask questions and say what worked in Denver, what's worked in the United States, and what hasn't. And I think they've done a great job on that. Responsible approach. You can see detailed record keeping, advertising and promotions, product presentation. This is all from Health Canada. This is one of the areas where the United States, I think, has really fallen behind because they don't have these standards across the board. Every state makes up their own regulations, determines how they want to do it. Health Canada has done a great job on putting these things out there. How do I lead the team to success in the age of cannabis? Positive intentions. Employees should both take educating themselves. The employer, I think what you're doing today, coming here and trying to figure out how as an employer do I work in the cannabis industry? How do I work in this new changing thing? Really think of it like alcohol. You know, people are like, well, are people gonna come to work high every day? Are people gonna, what do I do if they are high? I can just tell you that even working inside the marijuana dispensaries, grow facilities, one of the things that I said from the very beginning was, absolutely, if I have to tell you not to come to work high, I will change things here. So it's up to you guys to figure out how you want to come to work and how this is going to be led. In 4 years, and I mean this sincerely, 4 years I had one person that I had to send home because they were too high. So I don't think that this is going to become an issue where people are coming every day. Think about it just like drinking or anything else. How many people do you really see coming to work and you're saying, oh my God, I think they're going to be drunk today? I don't think you're going to see much of a difference in that, but I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to approach it. Just come straight out and tell them. This is no different than alcohol or anything else. If you're coming to work, come to work prepared to work. Set clear guidelines. It's important to make sure that they understand that it's like no different than anything else, the intoxication. Be ready to answer questions. If they're asking you about it, have a straightforward conversation, what you will and will not accept in the workplace. Be an ambassador for your brand, set an example for responsible use, be a leader, a role model, know when to others to expectations that apply to everyone. So again, it's just making sure that you're approaching this from a very open and honest conversation. It's no different. Just don't be afraid of it. It's going to be fine. Everyone said that Armageddon was coming, like I said, in Denver. It didn't happen. It's not going to be much different. Some of the stuff that I have done, I developed a guide for law enforcement for officers, worked with First Nations Health Authority, worked with Health Canada to establish some of these guidelines. One of the things I'm the most proud of, the guide for law enforcement. I developed that because, again, I told you that I had no idea about the cannabis side coming from law enforcement, so I wanted to educate officers. That right there was probably one of the best things I've done, because as I passed that out and officers started to realize that I wasn't trying to sell them or change their mind, but I was trying to educate them, it was really a big moment for us to just get that out there and start to educate and work with the law enforcement. End of cannabis prohibition. It's done responsibly. It's a great opportunity for business and consumers alike. Crucial for cannabis industry leaders to promote responsible vendor practices to protect communities, keep cannabis out of the hands of youth. That right there, to me, is number one. Decrease the availability of cannabis in the black market. This right here, I think, says it all. We want to keep this out of the hands of children. We want to promote responsible use, and we want to keep it out of the black market. Some of the stuff that I've done today, working with Peguis First Nations. One of the proudest moments I've had here in Manitoba was being presented by Chief Glenn Hudson with the blanket. That was probably one of the best moments. Down here, we did our ribbon cutting facility in our facility on Warman Road. Last week I spoke with Chief Smythe and the Manitoba Associated Chiefs of Police, and then in Selkirk, working with Peguis First Nations on some of the retail dispensaries. I know I went pretty quickly because I still have about 15 minutes left, and the reason I did that is because I really wanted to leave this and make it interactive. Questions from you all about experiences I've had or concerns you have, that's what I really like to do, is open this up now for questions and comments, concerns, any issues that you have. Sir.
I really like the speech. I thought it was wonderful. I really like your experience and how you went from both sides there. The question I have for you is, you mentioned that you were part of both medical and recreational companies. How do you differentiate that in Colorado?
So in Colorado, the medical side of it, it's done quite a bit different than it is here in Canada. I know here in Canada it's done through Canada Post. It's done through the mail and delivered. So in Colorado and most of the states, it's done in a dispensary. In some states you can have them co-located, so you can have basically one side is medical and one side is recreational. There's really, to be honest with you, there's really no difference in the product. So I think that's probably a big misconception, is that in the United States they call it vertical integration, where you have to have a grow facility and you have the dispensary, you have your patients assigned to the plants, and on the recreational side, you just come in and you have the products out there. What they have there is the same thing. They have a medical card. They're allowed to possess, again, this is Colorado, 2 ounces. So they can come in, buy 2 ounces of product, whether that is through edible form, whether that's flour, and on the recreational side, they can possess 1 ounce. So it really and truly, there's not much of a difference. It's the amounts that you can possess, same products. It's taxed differently, to be quite honest with you. You have to be 21 on the recreational side. So in Colorado, you can come in the same store. On the left side, you're gonna have medical. On the right side, you're gonna have recreational. Same products, just different amounts.
Sounds good, thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you very much for the presentation. One of the statements you made in terms of like alcohol, and it's not too much different in terms of the impairment issue. As we're heading into the holiday season, one of the questions we've been getting asked is, traditionally businesses, you have a holiday party, you give out those 2 tickets for drinks, and the reason a lot of employers feel they can do that comfortably is we generally understand how alcohol affects everyone, and yes, everyone has different tolerance levels, but generally you can kind of, the 1 hour per drink rule or 2 hours. But cannabis, there's an unknown, and I don't know if it's known or we don't know that it's known. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, because as we head to the holiday period, are we handing out 2 tickets for edibles? And how does that... it is a question we've actually got asked quite a few times. It's just those questions, you're saying anticipate those questions. That's one that I knew a lot of people came to us and were like, I didn't see that one coming.
So the very first time, let me go back to 2014 and changes in my life. So the first holiday party, and I went and they had basically a candy table set up for munchies and a table where they were having the different products. So they had different products that people were experiencing. Again, I think that's going to be to each company. And I think you really are going to have to look at this somewhat as alcohol, like you said, is you can hand out drink tickets and things. It's going to be the responsible use. Again, I was big on if you are consuming or any of the product here that we had to have some type of a Lyft, an Uber, a taxi, we had ways home, and you have to look out for that, because you're exactly right. Everyone is so used to saying, I'm used to having 2 drinks, or I know what my limit is. Right now you don't have the edible thing here. So when you hear these horror stories about edibles, the problem really becomes when you consume an edible, it processes through your liver. So how that edible is going to affect you is going to be completely different for every person in this room, and the time that it takes to affect. So people take 10 milligrams, that's kind of the thing, just kind of the norm that everybody says, let's start very slow and take 10 milligrams of this THC product. They wait 45 minutes or an hour and they're like, oh, I really don't feel anything. So they take another 10 milligrams. And then they take another because they still don't feel it. Now you're on this train ride that you can't get off of. and you don't know, you're thinking to yourself, what happened here? So I think what you really are gonna have to do is, again, how much are you going to allow just education about the responsible use of it, ensuring that you have some type of a service, a car service, or some type of thing for impairment, just like you would with alcohol. And I don't know that there's going to be a straightforward answer. Most people that use cannabis, I will tell you that my experience, I would take going to our holiday party and the cannabis users much over the alcohol and the sloppy drunk. And I have to tell you, I don't use cannabis myself. I drink alcohol, and I will tell you that even in law enforcement, I could sit here for the next 2 days and tell you experiences that I dealt with drunks, the experiences that I've had with somebody that's just high on cannabis, much different, much less much less aggravation, I guess. So I think what you'll find is education, make sure that they have a way to get home and just talk about it. Just make sure that you're promoting that, and if that's going to be allowed, just tell them you got to just use this responsibly like you would anything else. Any other questions? Sir.
Hi, thank you very much. Awesome presentation. Given your experience in Colorado, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the recreation or adult use compared to the medical. We've had medical in Canada for quite some time. Now with adult recreational use, there are some that say, oh, we don't need medical anymore. It's not really a legitimate thing. So why don't people just, why don't we just do away with that? So based on the experience in Colorado, what have you seen? Have you seen, still a need for medical, or could it all be one? Did medical patients drop off in Colorado and switch over to recreation? Anything that you can speak to on that experience would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has definitely shifted to almost all adult use or recreational. The patient counts that we had in our facilities have definitely dropped, and that's a lot. To just be honest with you, it came from the government side. They wanted the tax, because in the States, it's taxed at a rate of about 35% on the recreational side, and it's taxed at the regular 7.25% on the medical side. So they were really, when they allowed all of the recreational or adult use licenses, they really started pushing a lot of places that direction. The main reason in the states, professionals, because it's still a Schedule I narcotic in the United States, which again, I think that's where Canada has done such a much better job of this. Professionals such as lawyers, doctors, or anyone that holds some type of a professional license, they did not want to have their name on a registry, because if you had a medical card, you know, you were basically in the system as you would. On the recreational side, you just showed an ID to say that you're 21, and that was not ever tracked. So I think for your medical patients and some of the seniors, some of the children and stuff like that, I think it's extremely important to keep the medical side and to try to regulate what the doctors are prescribing. Keep an eye on what, you know, especially as it relates to kids, if you're talking about epilepsy and things like that. I think you're going to start, if you completely get rid of the medical side, I think you're going to really hurt the benefits for keeping track of what the kids are consuming to help with certain ailments and stuff like that. I think the recreational, as 21 or 19, 18-year-olds come in, if they just want to use it for that, that's fine, but keep the medical side so you can really get some good statistics. I think that is probably the biggest thing that I would say for Canadians to do right now, is start tracking. Like, if you want to know about driving impairment, if you want to know, has it increased the arrest, has it done certain things, start tracking and keeping that information right now. In the United States, up until 5 years ago, they really didn't ask a question, have you used cannabis, or what is your cannabis consumption? So now all of a sudden, as you come into the emergency room, they're asking, have you used cannabis? As you get arrested, whether it be for a parking ticket or something, have you used cannabis? So they're giving these statistics that, oh my God, cannabis use has risen 500% narcotic or cannabis-related arrests. We've had a 300% increase in cannabis-related emergency room visits. Those are all numbers based off of no baseline 5 years ago, so they're saying year over year, what's happening. I think if Canada starts today taking those statistics, really tracking, and they can see how the impairment, has there been an increase in driving while impaired, has there been an increase in emergency room visits, I think that will make a big difference. I think your medical side, keep that in place so that way you can track how it's affecting or how it's helping certain physical ailments and the different diseases, stuff like that.
Just wondering in the States if you guys had any issues with our industry in particular. We're cross-border, we're 24/7. We have lots of owner-operators. We have people who work at home who feel that you can't regulate that based on that they own their equipment, that is their own personal business in that aspect, but it does impact what we do and how we do it. So wondering how in the States you were able to regulate or govern the exceptions to a 9-to-5 workplace where you physically see people on a day-to-day basis.
Again, I think that if you really think about this, cannabis, you know, it's at the forefront right now because of the big push on legalization and everything else. But if you really think about this, cannabis is not new. Cannabis has been here for hundreds of years. People have been using it just like they've been using alcohol. And what I found across the board, whether it be people working from home, if you really think about it this way, if you have an addictive personality, you have an addictive personality. If you're going to drink alcohol from working from home, if you're going to be on opiates working from home, or you're going to be using cannabis working from home, I don't really think you're going to see much of a difference. I think that's really going to come down to the person. I think if that person has a tendency towards addiction, whether it be alcohol, cannabis, opiates, they're going to have an issue working from home. I can tell you that speaking with many employers across the United States and other places, that really has not become an issue. They haven't noticed a difference. They haven't had some big increase. And again, I think that really becomes one of the things that surprised me, and I think it was, I was a federal agent, so people didn't come to my house to get high. So when I started working in the cannabis industry and I actually had cannabis in my house, I was actually surprised at the number of people that I had known for 20, 30 years, had no idea that they had used cannabis, and now that it had become legal or in the forefront, they did it more openly. So I think your people are using cannabis, have used cannabis, always. So if you haven't noticed a problem with your employees before, in my personal opinion, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference, and that's from personal experience, and that's from talking with many others across the industry and across the United States. I just haven't noticed a difference in that.
Hi, I have a two-part question for you. How many businesses do you have open in both the States, the States and Canada?
So we have several facilities across the United States that we either manage. So just last week, GrowForce, as a strictly Canadian company, we're headquartered in Toronto. We had partnered with Peguis First Nations here. We have a facility here on Warman Road. We have some facilities in Nova Scotia. We have facilities in Calgary. And then we also manage some other facilities in the United States. So whether we manage or own, we have numerous across the United States, I would say 30 plus.
Okay. And how long did it take you? Sorry, my colleague and I were planners, so urban planners. I'm just curious how long it took you to get from the deciding to open up a facility to actually opening it.
That comes down to money, permitting, and the availability of the land. So in Canada, for example, we bought the Warman facility, and I have our facility managers, our security guys over here at this table, and they can tell you the permitting process. They're just going through, Pete, what are you talking right now to get Warman open? So we bought it during the summer. So we're doing several phases, and so just to get phase one, what are we looking at? So 100,000 square foot facility here in Winnipeg, we're talking about a year and a half to be fully operational, producing. And that's going to be several $1 million cost when you start talking about the infrastructure inside the facility with lighting and different things. So it's really going to kind of depend on how much money you can sink into this. Is it a facility that you're retrofitting? Is it something that you're taking down? Is it something you're building from scratch? Our partners at Peguis, we're looking at a facility to bring up. I think you've seen it right down on Portage. We're trying to do a temporary facility. So Jen, what are we talking on?
From a timing perspective, we're in the water right now, so we're trying to get that first access. Maybe about 6 months out, licensing.
So on the dispensary side, grow facility is going to be totally different because of there's so many different HVAC, lighting, the benching. There's a lot of different things, the power, making sure the amount of power that you're going to have to use. And that's one of the nice things about Manitoba. Let me tell you something. The great deal to coming to Manitoba is the power rates, the hydro rate is unbelievable here. So this has been a great area to come for the cannabis industry. It was very attractive for us to build our flagship facility here. So grow facilities, cultivation, 18 months. Dispensary side, probably about 6 months, something like that.
Hi. We just launched a impairment policy to all of our staff, and it says if you're impaired at work, we observe signs of impairment, we'll be sending you home, and we won't tolerate impairment in the workplace. And we're supposed to observe the signs of impairment. So with alcohol, I think we've all had experience in that. But for those who haven't had experience in seeing signs of impairment through cannabis in the workplace, could you give us some tips on that?
Sure, and to be honest with you, it's really not going to be a lot different. You're going to have kind of the bloodshot eyes or kind of the watery bloodshot eyes, maybe a little bit slow, a little slurred, just kind of, if someone is normally more upbeat and talkative, and maybe now they're kind of very slow and kind of watery eyes and kind of that blank stare type of a thing. Again, I was shocked because I thought I was going to be dealing with that on a daily basis. I was not kidding when I said, oh my God, I stereotyping, I can't work with stoners every day. Just didn't see it. The one time I did, it was so obvious, very bloodshot, watery eyes, and I was trying to communicate, ask questions, and he was very slow to respond and just kind of looked at me like, why are you talking to me right now? Wanted no part of it. So again, not a lot different than your intoxication. I think just like anything else, somebody that's really impaired, you'll notice quickly, and you'll recognize it. Like I said, the main thing will be the eyes, a lot of the eyes, or don't necessarily take, and I think this is important, I was talking about this last night, just because the smell, or you think you smell cannabis or something, every time I walk into one of our grow facilities and I leave, you would think I had just smoked an ounce of pot, and I haven't smoked a thing. So smell could definitely be part of it. As they smoke it, you could start to smell that, but don't automatically assume. They could have just been around it. They literally could have touched it, somebody else had it around them, been inside of a facility, or it's on their clothes. It will definitely stay on your clothes, so don't just automatically assume a smell is that part of it. But that would be something, that would be your first clue also. If you do smell it, then look further. I think she said last question. Oh, okay.
We're talking about different levels of intoxication relative to the cannabis as well as alcohol. Can you talk about, or help us understand a little bit about what that hangover might look like? Because you said THC stays in your body for a longer.
You mentioned THC stays in your body for a longer period of time. So is there a hangover that people can have that might affect their productivity in the workplace?
That's actually one of the, probably I would say maybe the beautiful part. Like when I have a hangover, I don't want to do anything from alcohol. I'm down for like the next 2 days. Part of it, I'm just getting old, but several of my friends now, several of my coworkers use cannabis, and to be honest with you, most of them have switched over to cannabis because they didn't like the hangover effect from the alcohol. There's really not, from everything that I understand, there's really not much of a hangover status. That THC that's in your system, and I think that's where the biggest problem is, because that THC is not active anymore. When you smoke, the THC becomes Delta 9. You go into all kinds of scientific talk about different things, how it affects your body. But the THC will stay just in your system, but there will be no active THC. So you're not going to be under impairment. There will be no psychoactive effect of it anymore. And everything that I understand, there's really not much of a hangover as there would be with alcohol. So if they were to smoke it the night before, wake up the next day, versus if I was out having several drinks, I'm definitely going to be in the worse mood than the person that was smoking marijuana the night before. So I don't think you're really going to have much of that hangover effect.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.